and we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Hum.
And I'm Ann Northrup, your Christmas elf, having concocted a red and green outfit. I feel like I just jumped out of the movie Elf.
Meli Kalikimaka.
Happy Festivus.
Yes. Hey, stay tuned. Our guest today is activist and old comrade of ours, Reginald Thomas Brown, on their experience as a person with HIV, a long-term survivor of HIV/AIDS, in a COVID vaccine trial.
We are up to the minute on this show. Also up to the minute, an absolutely new legal decision at the behest of several LGBT community centers. A federal judge has blocked Trump's prohibition on diversity trainings that take on systemic racism and sexism and homophobia.
And we have more good news. A federal judge has ruled that Ohio must let transgender people correct their birth certificates to align with their gender identities.
What a concept. And women athletes stood up for transgender girls in girls' sports this week.
But a Republican member of Congress who performed a same-sex wedding has been censured by his party for this.
You know, they reveal themselves so clearly, and yet they keep getting elected. Civil rights activist Jean Graetz, who stood with Rosa Parks in the 1950s and LGBT activists in this century, has died.
But anti-LGBT bigotry has surfaced this week in Providence, Rhode Island, and in San Diego, and in Eureka in California.
Proving we keep needing those activists. The UN is launching a global campaign to end LGBTQ plus youth homelessness.
And having given women the right to vote not so long ago, Switzerland enacts marriage equality.
Never too late.
But we welcome our guest, Reginald Thomas Brown. Are you there, Reginald? Come on in and join the show.
Well, keep introducing.
Well, I will. Oh, there
he is.
There they are. So, Reginald, wait, hold it. Let me get my notes here. Okay. So I'm going to introduce you, Reginald. You are a queer, Black, gender fluid, gender nonconforming activist, a long-term survivor of HIV/AIDS, a board member of the activist group Vocal New York, and an ambassador for the Unity Fellowship. I'm going to get the full title: Unity Fellowship of Christ Church. And you've been arrested many times to get Governor Cuomo to release billions of dollars in supportive housing funds, arrested to stop the repeal of the Affordable Care Act. And your influences are said to be, you can correct us, James Baldwin, Nina Simone, Josephine Baker, Paul Robeson, and Eartha Kitt.
Yeah, those are some of my influences too. Particularly Nina Simone, who I listen to all the time. But you've seen Reginald on this show before. We've done panels of longtime HIV survivors and others that Reginald's joined us for. But we wanted Reginald to come in today in particular because they're in a Moderna vaccine trial. And specifically chosen for being a long-term survivor of HIV. One thing that's interesting is that both Pfizer and Moderna, in designing their trials, reached out to a wide, diverse variety of people because pharmaceutical companies have been criticized for years for not having diverse panels of people in their trials. The Russian vaccine trial specifically excluded people with HIV and others. So, Reginald, after this lengthy introduction, we're delighted to have you here to fill us in about your experience with this. How'd you get into this? How are you feeling? How's it going?
Absolutely. Let me make a correction. Pfizer and Moderna initially did not want us in this trial.
Oh.
June 28th, I have the date as of June 30th. They did not want this. They want in this trial. Paz Magazine found out about that, and they sent around an online petition for those of us in the community to rise up, as well as other people. And we just said, "Oh no, 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 no! Yes, you will include us." So now they have. So initially, they did not.
Wow, that's fascinating and amazing that you were able to accomplish getting into it in a short period of time. We've often had to fight for years for that kind of thing. So tell us about getting into the trial and about your experience.
Okay, well, as soon as I found out that there were going to be clinical trials, like I said, this was like around July or August, I applied for maybe 7 or 8 trials, and one of them included trials that were overseas, because I said, okay, I specifically wanted to get in the trial because I wanted to see what the effect would be on people who are HIV positive. So it just so happens that Moderna has made it their position to include people. Well, okay, they after they change their mind, they include people who are HIV positive, but they also have specifically wanted people who are traditionally underrepresented in their trials. They made a concerted effort to do this. They were deliberate about it. They were intentional. And so I got into it because I wanted to help. If something is going on, I'm on the front lines. I'm ready to, go and shut stuff down. But this is the way that I can put my life on the line and shut stuff down, by doing this. All the medications that I'm taking, all the HIV medications I'm taking, somebody went through a clinical trial for. I mean, the medication I'm on now, I've been on an alphabet of medications, and somebody had to go through it to find out what the side effects were. So I owe it to them, but I also owe it to those people who are coming after me. Also, this is what I can do to end this, because it should not have gone this long, but since I couldn't stop that, at least this is how I can contribute to it.
So tell us what's entailed in being in a trial.
Okay, first of all, there's informed consent. Every trial that I've been in has been informed consent. I know that you probably know about the Tuskegee instrument, that Black people from like about 1932 to 1962, Black men particularly, were in a clinical trial that they did not know about. They had syphilis, they had diagnosed syphilis, but they weren't informed that they did, because they wanted to see what the effects of stage 4 syphilis was. So every trial that I've been in, the first thing they do is informed consent. There's this very lengthy thing that are you sure you understand? Are you sure you understand? So that before you do anything, you have to understand that I've given them my consent to do this. So I'm number 5 of 30,000 of the Moderna participants. Like I said, I got in on the ground floor. So my first injection was the first week of September. And the only side effect I had was a mild dizziness, just mild dizziness that went away. And then the second injection was just the last week of September. I got the mild dizziness again, but in addition, I got itching at the injection site. Apparently, other participants also experienced itching at the injection site. I don't know if placebos do that or not. But like I said, at this point, I don't know if I'm in the placebo or the actual vaccine.
So how long does the trial last? I mean, right now, hundreds of thousands, millions of vaccines are being doled out, and I hope those people are being tracked and studied. But right. How does your trial end?
It's 26 months. So I'm in month 4. So December is month 4. It's 26 months. I did an infusion study study with Weill Cornell in 2014, and they followed me for 24 months. So they're very rigorous. They're very, and they check in on you. Moderna, what is today? On the 28th, they're going to call me again to see how I am. The first month, I got calls like every week, but then now it's like they get a call every month. And I don't have to see the nurse practitioner again until March.
So if you're getting a placebo, you won't be able to get the vaccine until you're saying March?
No. I got a letter from Moderna about 3 weeks ago saying that once FDA approves it, then they will give the vaccine to those who got the placebo.
But you don't.
This was before the FDA has approved it. Now that it's approved and it's here in New York City, I expect to get it imminently.
Well, it's gotten this emergency use authorization, but it hasn't, I think, gotten final approval in a sort of regular way. Does that, you know, if that interferes?
As far as I know, it's being administered here in New York.
Well, Fauci got it yesterday, so
and first line people are getting it too. I mean, Moderna and Pfizer both are being administered in New York, as far as I know.
Now, Reginald, in this country, where do people with HIV/AIDS at any age qualify in terms of the priority list of when you're going to get the rest of your brothers and sisters with HIV/AIDS are going to get the vaccine?
Don't know. No, I've not gotten any particular protocol about that. I just got the letter. Just said that once the approval comes, those who did not get the vaccine would actually get the vaccine.
Now, there was a story this week from HIV/AIDS experts, advocates, saying it is safe for people with HIV, that they're asserting that. Some countries have recommended HIV-positive people be given priority as the most at risk. Germany has put people with HIV in the third tier, with over 60s and people with pre-existing conditions and teachers. But Britain has put people with HIV as a sixth priority. So,
well, I guess America has not put anybody. I mean, because the point is that we're so far behind the curve. I mean, it's embarrassing, you know. So it's just, yeah, it's unfathomable that this could be so out of control. Something that could have been helped is so out of control. So I have no idea where we are.
Well, where we are is people with COVID waiting 7 to 10 days for a bed in many parts of the country. And
people die.
Reminds me of the early days of the AIDS crisis.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I said, I've been here before. I've been to this rodeo. I've seen this before. The only difference is that because COVID affected everybody, they got news. It was part of the narrative much sooner. Reagan did not mention AIDS until the 6th year of his term. By that time, hundreds of thousands of people died of HIV.
We should also let people know that what activists and scientists are saying is that these vaccines are safe for people with HIV because they contain no live virus.
That's correct.
So they're not expected to do anything harmful. So you mentioned a couple of things when you had your injections, dizziness and itching at the injection site. Have you had any other manifestations of any kind of symptom that you might attribute to this?
After the second injection, I got a very profound thirst. It's almost like when I have a cold and the back of my throat is dry and my sinuses are dry. So I had to drink lots and lots and lots and lots of water. I mean, it went away. It didn't keep me from doing anything. I just noticed that, my gosh, I'm thirsty again. But that lasted maybe 2 or 3 days, but that did not happen after the first injection. So other than that, the slight dizziness, the itching on the second time, and the dry mouth and throat on the second time, those are the only things that have happened that are unusual for me.
Well, we had something unusual happen in Australia this week where they dropped a vaccine candidate because people who were getting it, some people were getting false positive tests for HIV. And we know that there's a relationship between these drugs. The other story that came out this week was, that COVID can cross into the brain barrier, like HIV, and has some similar characteristics that way. I mean, I say this not to depress everybody over their Christmas dinner, but we've got to pay attention about how serious this is.
Right. And I did not know, I had not heard that about the brain study. So the point is, like I said, there's so much we don't know that we could have known, could have known more. But that's why I say anything that I can do to contribute to figuring out what's going on, I'm doing it because I can.
And we're extremely grateful for that because I think we all feel a little desire for euphoria that these vaccines will work. And it's only because you and others like you are willing to be studied over a period of time that we're going to get any real knowledge of what's going on with these vaccines. Now, of course, one of the big topics of discussion around availability of these vaccines has been around race. Certainly with acknowledgement of what's gone before. I hear this sort of painful dichotomy from Black people who feel that they've been abused in trials like this in the past and not given full information and been guinea pigs, to the other side of the coin of Black people saying we haven't had medicines made available to us because we've been left out. And that seems to me a very poignant position to be in. And so I wonder how all that factors into your deciding to get involved in this.
And, I understand the reluctance. There was the Tuskegee instrument. There was a doctor whose statue was removed from Central Park who did these horrible experiments on Black women. I don't remember the person's name, but I mean, there's a history of abuse, of being guinea pigs. So, I mean, that's one part of it. But on the other side, too, is that there's a history of not testing Black people, so we don't know how it actually works on Black people. So I don't know what the excuse is. I don't know what it is. But like I said, every chance I get, I enroll in a study. And pretty much, I've got, like I said, this is about my 6th or 7th study. I get into it because I want to make sure that at least one Black person is part of the study. I mean, how do people do that?
How do people find out about these studies in the first place?
Oh, wow. I am enrolled in something called Research Match. I'm on like all kinds of lists of things that come. In fact, I get offers. Things come to me almost every day, and I'll see if I'm eligible for it. I signed up for it, so I'm on the list. That's how I found out about these.
So if people start Googling for clinical trials, they can find out how to access these. That's
exactly what I did to find out about the COVID trials. I Googled it, and I got a list, and I started applying to them.
Okay. You are a dedicated activist, as Andy pointed out in the intro, and you and I have worked together most recently in Reclaim Pride with the Queer Liberation March. I know you're out there with a number of groups. I'd just like to ask you your reflections on this year in particular, certainly with the Black Lives Matter movement and all the activism, the police brutality, everything that's going on. What's your experience been, and what are your thoughts about all that at this point?
Yes, it's interesting because as you know, Reclaim Pride wasn't going to do anything for Pride, but then the whole George Floyd thing came up, and I think we decided collectively that okay, we understand that there's a pandemic going on, but we also understand that this is also affecting people's lives. So we took it upon ourselves to do this, and I mean, that was the first time I've been around 50,000 people since the whole thing started, and I thought, you know what I did? As soon as I finished that, I went and got a test. Just to see how I was. And also Occupy City Hall did the same thing. Vocal decided that, yes, it's dangerous for us to be out there, but it's also dangerous for the police to keep doing what they're doing. So what are you going to do? So like I said, I knew it was a calculated risk, but I took the precautions that I did, just like I have not let HIV stop me from living my life. I don't intend to let COVID stop me from living my life and being active and doing everything that I can.
And where do you think we stand in this country at this moment, at this point of, we hope, transition? Still crossing my fingers on that one politically, but more largely in the culture as a whole.
I don't quite understand what you're asking.
Well, have we eradicated racism? Have we fixed the police? Have attitudes changed? Is there a different momentum in this country?
Yes and no. Yes and no. I mean, yes for us who are in the movement, and no for those who aren't. I mean, it's no, yes and no.
I mean, the Movement Advancement Project, came out with their study this past week and, basically said that COVID is falling harder on LGBTQ people and really hard on LGBTQ people of color in terms of dislocation, unemployment, lack of services, all those kinds of things. So we clearly have a long way to go.
Right. And as anything, when white people get a cold, black people get pneumonia. Kind of thing. Whatever happens, my community. I am privileged. My mother was a nurse, and because my mother was a nurse, I came from a background where medical checkups were as normal as eating. So I realize I'm privileged that I've always been on top of this, and every doctor I've had, if I can't have the conversation like you and I are having, we don't have them. I challenge my doctor. What is this? Why am I taking it? What are the side effects? What are the dietary restrictions? So I stay on top of my thing. But then again, I'm privileged because my mother was a nurse. So again, all I can do is be an example and lead by example, to just let other people know that I understand your reluctance and you have every right to be, but at the same time, these things are here and they will help you. They will help you if you avail yourself to them.
Now, you are a religious person. We had some news this week.
I'm not a religious person. I'm spiritual. I'm not a religious person. I'm spiritual. There's a very big difference. Religion is a set of rules that people set up to control people. And I came from a religion, and I found Unity Fellowship, which we believe that God is love and love is for everyone. We believe that spirit has no gender. So, I'm sorry. Yes, exactly. And it's interesting because as a kid, I always wondered, why is God always referred to as he? And then when I got to this church and they say God, we believe that God has no gender, I thought, well, so I'm not off. There are other people who think this way as well. So no, I am not religious, but I am spiritual. I have a very strong relationship with Creator, with Spirit, and the ancestors.
And well, I mean, even the Bible says in Christ there is neither male nor female, but they don't act on it. And the Vatican is, the Catholic Church, very reactionary. But they this week said it's morally acceptable to take the vaccine, even though some stem cells from aborted fetuses were used. Take it. And the Muslim leaders, the high leaders, said there may be some stuff in there that we don't like in terms of materials, but you can take the vaccine.
Okay, well, see, my spirituality doesn't even tell me all that. My spirituality says, trust your God, trust me, follow me. And that's what I do. I go by my spirit. I hear all this other stuff, but I just, okay, does that resonate with my spirit? If it does, I go with it. If it doesn't, I say, okay, fine. And for me, it's not a matter of trying to prove to anybody or anything. I just know that for me in my spiritual walk, I am doing exactly what I'm supposed to do.
Well, we thank you for doing exactly what you're doing, and you are a leader and a guide to all of us, and we appreciate your sharing your experience and your messages with our audience, who I know will be led by your example.
And thank you for allowing me a vehicle to do this. I think I shared with you that about 6 or 8 years ago, I asked Creator why I'm still here, considering so many people who were diagnosed when I was diagnosed are not here. And the answer was just as clear as the conversation we're having. She said, you need to go out so that people can see you and hear your story.
And people cannot tell from your appearance, but you were born in 1952.
That's right. I'll be 69 in January 14th.
Happy birthday.
Thank you so much.
And happy Festivus, Merry Christmas, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy New Year.
Happy life.
Exactly. Thank you, Reginald. Thank you for being here. And we look forward to your bringing many more messages to Gay USA.
Thank you so much. God bless you. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye. Thank you. All right. We bid adieu to Reginald. If we don't want you stuck in here, I'm sure our director will let you leave. Just get...
there he goes.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to the other headlines. Most importantly, this federal court decision out of California.
Yep.
Amazing.
Okay, let's go to that.
Well, what happened was that you may remember that Trump, in one of his fits of pique, said diversity training. We're not having any of that nonsense in the federal government. Forget it. So he issued an executive order banning the federal government entertaining any diversity training in any of its agencies, among any of its contractors, I think.
You could have diversity training, it just couldn't acknowledge systemic racism and sexism. And so this judge, federal judge, blocked sections of it, came from the Northern District of California. One of the plaintiffs, the lead plaintiff, was the Santa Cruz Lesbian and Gay Community Center. And they said that these trainings were crucial to their mission of serving underserved communities.
Well, it was a nice collaboration. It was the LA LGBT Center, the Diversity Center in Santa Cruz, the AIDS Foundation Chicago, Crescent Care in New Orleans, the LGBT Center in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and SAGE in New York. And the judge issued a nationwide preliminary injunction against this Trump ban on diversity training. And that's huge because this was just a dastardly move he made to shut down any discussion of these issues.
We heard from people who were scheduled to do federal trainings, and they were just sent emails saying, you're canceled. Talk about cancel culture.
Ugh, terrible.
Well, but hell hath frozen over. Pat Robertson has told Trump to pack it in. While Pat had originally said that God told him that Trump would win, this tireless bigot now says that Trump is acting very erratic and should accept Biden's victory. And he also says he should not run again in 2024. His money is on Nikki Haley.
Well, look, I think we've sunk to a low point if we have to quote Pat Robertson.
It has shaken things up a bit when someone like that finally acknowledges reality.
I guess so. It wasn't, it didn't give me hope.
Hell hath also frozen over in the Capitol building. The statue of Robert E. Lee was one of two from Virginia in Statuary Hall, has been removed and replaced by Barbara Johns, who was a 16-year-old high school student. In 1951, organized a walkout over the substandard education that Black students were getting, and became part of the segregation cases that were decided in Brown v. Board in 1954. Which I think is also a time to acknowledge the passing of Jean Graetz at the age of 90. One of the few white women in Montgomery, Alabama, who supported the 1955 bus boycott, backing up Rosa Parks and Dr. King. She died 3 months after her husband, Robert, who was a Lutheran minister and also obviously participated in these organizing. But she got, for taking that stance, death threats, slashed tires, obscene phone calls, multiple bombings for taking that stance. And in 2000, the two of them were arrested demonstrating for LGBT rights in Cleveland, then in the District of Columbia and in Indianapolis. The author of a book on Rosa Parks said of Jean Graetz, there are nice fuzzy liberals, and then there are the Graetzes. To do what they did requires doing it every day. And she eventually went back to Montgomery, Alabama to live after a long time in Ohio and completed her college degree in 2015.
An amazing life for both of them and amazing role models. I have to say, in reading her obituary, I was a little shocked at how few white people were involved in those demonstrations and boycotts. So I'm particularly grateful to them, but...
multiple bombings.
Yeah, well, sure. Exactly. Well, not that I think either of them have necessarily been subjected to multiple bombings, but I was heartened by a couple of the newest Biden appointees this week. The new education secretary is supposed to be Miguel Cardona from Connecticut, Secretary of Education. He's currently the education commissioner in Connecticut. One footnote here, there had been talk that Randi Weingarten might get that job, but I think she was just too strong a union person to end up as Secretary of Education. Am I wrong about that?
I don't know. But they did not go for someone who was from a union. They went with an administrator.
Yes, but someone who has quite a good history of work in the public schools, and my fingers are crossed for him. I was also, just over the moon to hear about Deb Haaland being nominated for Secretary of the Interior, first Native American to show up in a U.S. government cabinet position.
And Secretary of the Interior, which oversees so many tribal lands.
Yes, and I really hope she gets to do what needs to be done and doesn't get sucked into the sort of mediocre government attitudes. And I was also interested and happy for the most part to see Alex Padilla appointed by Governor Newsom in California to take Kamala Harris's position in the Senate. He cried at thinking about his parents coming here from Mexico separately and then meeting in LA. He's been at Quality California is very happy about this. He's a longtime LGBT ally and, for instance, in charge of voting in California and helped ease the way for trans people to be able to vote easily. It's a little poignant to lose the one black woman in the United States Senate, although she's now presiding over it as vice president. But I hope that there will soon be other opportunities to right that wrong. And
He is
so
the president of the Senate and will be casting tie votes if we win those two Georgia elections.
Yeah. And Alex Padilla is just another reminder of how stupid it is for Trump and his cronies to be talking about merit standards for immigration, that you can only come into this country if you're a professional or have some kind of credentials.
Or you work for the Trump organization.
Well, yeah, that too. But here's Alex Padilla, whose parents cleaned houses, did menial work when they came here, and their son, just the next generation, is now a U.S. senator. It is so short-sighted for people to set up these kinds of standards for
And our legal groups are trying to help with all that because Lambda and Immigration Equality and Kramer-Levin are suing the Department of Homeland Security, challenging their death to asylum rule that makes it virtually impossible for LGBTQ people and people with HIV fleeing persecution to get asylum in this country.
Yeah.
So they're on the case. You're not allowed to claim gender-based claims in asylum anymore under the Trump rules. So they are working to repeal those things.
Good riddance for that crowd.
If they can.
Yeah. And there's lots of good work going on. The UN has a new program where they're trying to give a little more attention to particularly trans youth who are homeless around the world. That's been a subject of conversation here, of course, for a long time, but they've been trying to broaden this. So we have a little promo video they did, a cartoon with a voice by Cyndi Lauper, who's been involved in this issue for many years. And so we thought we'd just give you a look at that little minute-long UN clip.
Think of a person, someone who is young, filled with hopes and dreams. At that stage, when support is more important than ever, having access to a safe place to live, education, employment, healthcare, and social connection is fundamental. Can you imagine being deprived of these because of who you are? Young LGBTIQ plus people are often left without a home, without community or government protection while facing constant discrimination and violence. Now think of that same young person again. This time, they are not only dreaming, but they are thriving. The difference is, they have access to all these fundamental rights. We must work with young LGBTIQ plus people. Together, we can create inclusive, affordable housing where they can have the opportunity to be their best selves. Together, we can build a world where every young person has a safe place to call home, no matter who they are or who they love.
There's so much homelessness and dislocation in the world, but it's worse for LGBTQ kids because they're often rejected by their own families, and they talk about separation. So this is a wonderful program, and I hope they spread the message around the world. You can we'll include the link to that video and the whole program in our email, which we send out each week. If you want to sign up for that, go to gayusatv.org. That's also a place where you can make an end-of-year donation if you so choose. We appreciate it. Oh my God, we're so appreciative of the support that we've been getting at this time of year. Really, really honored.
And humbled, very, very grateful. And I hope you see that your support helps us keep this program going week in and week out. Always a new program every week.
Every week.
And we've been doing it. We'll celebrate our 25th anniversary together on this show in February.
Our silver anniversary.
Maybe I'll brag.
Each other a lot longer than that.
Well, not a lot longer compared to that, but 25 years in February. So if you want this to keep going, we appreciate your support.
Ed and I worked together at Hetrick Martin in 1987.
Yep.
All right. Back to the news. In Ohio, a federal district court ruled that the state's refusal to issue corrected birth certificates for trans people violates the U.S. Constitution. The case was brought by Lambda and the ACLU on behalf of 4 transgender plaintiffs. Kansas was resistant to this. They settled with Lambda. Tennessee is now the lone holdout. The judge said that the state tried to insist that on the birth certificate was correct when it was issued at birth. So the plaintiffs invoked their right to privacy, and they got strict scrutiny on that and on due process claims, and heightened scrutiny on the discrimination claim.
And I have to make a correction from last week. I have to announce that Andy was right. I was wrong. In Michigan, there was a split decision on discrimination. The lower court in Michigan had ruled that sexual orientation is not covered by the law that forbids sex discrimination, in spite of the Bostock decision, but does include trans discrimination. What the lower court said was that a prior 93 decision had rejected a sexual orientation discrimination claim, and therefore they had to follow that, but that there was no prior decision on transgender rights, so they didn't have to rule out finding against transgender discrimination.
But out lesbian Attorney General of Michigan, Dana Nessel, is appealing the bad decision.
And we're all waiting for the decision from the Supreme Court on competing claims over religious freedom. And maybe that will clear up some of this combined with the Bostock decision, but we'll see. It's all a little up in the air.
And we're still not sure if Governor Cuomo is going to sign the gender-neutral public bathroom bill introduced by Danny O'Brien.
Oh, he's such a tease. How can he not sign it? He'll sign it eventually, is my prediction. But again,
It's like saying Trump will leave eventually. Yes. So.
I have another little pet peeve this week. This was the 10th anniversary of the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And I saw an interview on MSNBC where they were talking to a military leader and a former leader of the Service Members Legal Defense Network, and they're all heaping praise on Obama and members of Congress. And I'm thinking to myself, what about all those military members, lesbian and gay and bisexual, who came out under Don't Ask, Don't Tell and appeared on television to risk getting kicked out of the military to say, I'm gay and I think this is a lousy law? What about all the activists? What about all the people who went to court? How dare you give all the credit to politicians on this when the grassroots and the people in the military are the people who should be getting the thanks and congratulations for this?
I think that's the reason that my friend Ann Northrup left mainstream journalism.
Yes. And now I can just yell at them from outside.
I'm glad I didn't sign up for Amazon Smile, or I don't know, but that program, and they've been trying to get me into it, benefits 40 anti-LGBT hate groups. Raised $215 million for them since 2013. They've removed some of them, like Alliance Defending Freedom and the Family Research Council, but those two groups profited mightily from the first stimulus bill. I don't know if we're going to get this next stimulus, but I hate to think who's going to get that money, because we're not going to get much of it.
Well, I did sign up for Amazon Smile to benefit a lesbian group on Long Island, the North Fork Women for Women's group. So you can fight back by designating LGBTQ plus organizations to receive a tiny percentage of your purchases.
In North Carolina, a Winston-Salem wedding venue, the Warehouse on Ivy, told a lesbian couple that we're not going to host your same-sex marriage ceremony citing Christian values, which I thought was love your neighbor. And I'm wondering how that might not be sex discrimination.
Well, they don't have a statewide law on non-discrimination. I don't think they even have a no sex discrimination law. I may be wrong about that. Someone will correct me, but they certainly don't have a statewide law on sexual orientation non-discrimination.
Well, Topeka, Kansas does. They passed a bill banning discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity, a unanimous vote. It also covers genetic information and veteran status and prevents discrimination through telecommunications and social media.
I think they need an anti-Hitler law in San Diego. Yes. The San Diego Police Department was circulating among its members. Now, I don't mean that to say the leaders of the department were circulating this. Members of the police department were circulating a Hitler parody video that included homophobic slurs against the new gay mayor, Todd Gloria. And what's my note here? Because they're mad at him because they're being investigated. The cops are being investigated because they were caught eating inside a restaurant in a group, which is against the law in San Diego. So they started circulating this homophobic Hitler parody.
And then there's Providence, Rhode Island, where a council member, Michael Correa, was caught on tape, the audio tape, referring to a trans leader, Justice Gaines, who had run for city council, as it. He also talks about throwing hot coffee on another woman and giving her ninth degree burns. His misconduct is being investigated. He admits he could have used better language, but about Gaines, he said, my civil rights have been violated by that recording. The city council has asked him for an apology.
And what's going on in Eureka? I don't think I saw whatever that was.
A couple came home to find their yard decorations vandalized, smeared with feces, and placed at the base of their pride flag. Police are investigating it as a hate crime. Brian Kleinmeyer and Daniel Kane said the perpetrators wiped their rears with their gingerbread men, who were, it's the second vandalism in a week. The men said something about gingerbread men holding hands sent them over the edge.
Well, on a more very serious note, in Pritchard, Alabama, a young person, 19 years old, variously known as Jaheim or Bella, gender nonconforming, maybe trans woman was murdered at a party, and the partygoers said that she was murdered for wearing a rainbow jumpsuit. What is wrong with people? Whether it is smearing feces or actually murdering someone, what is wrong with people?
The lid has been taken off of bigotry in this country. It's always been there. We all have to fight it, but the lid has been taken off, and people feel free to act out, like the Republican Party in Virginia. We told you about Congressman Denver Riggleman. He did perform a same-sex wedding, so he was denied renomination to Congress. So the Republican Party of Appomattox County has now censured him for this, piling on in the spirit of the season, censuring him for going against the values of the party, which are what? He performed a wedding for two staffers, gay staffers. I guess the next penalty up from this is lethal injection. He was replaced by a guy named Bob Good, who is not. He's the guy who told a rally this week that the coronavirus outbreak is a phony pandemic. And this is the House seat once occupied by James Madison. How far?
Well, slightly better news in Atlanta. The city is going to name the Atlanta Eagle Bar, a gay leather bar, I think, will be the first gay historic landmark in the South, in the whole South, the first gay historic landmark. It's closed now for COVID, but this designation will give it a chance to remain and reopen when it's possible. You may remember our talking about this bar in 2009. It's hard for me to believe it was that long ago, when there was a violent, illegal police raid of the bar. They really just stormed in there and tossed patrons out and beat them and abused them and arrested them illegally. The staff and patrons sued the police. There was a protracted trial on this, or legal argument. And it ended up with 6 cops getting fired. That was a major, major victory for us. It's very hard to get cops fired anywhere. So the Atlantic Eagle Bar has earned its historic designation.
Very encouraged to see over 60 women's rights groups joining the challenge to the Idaho anti-trans law, which says that trans girls can't participate in girls' sports. It really goes the gamut of women athletes, women's sports groups, the Women's Sports Foundation, led by Billie Jean King, Megan Rapinoe, Candace Parker. But the American Medical Association backs this. All the professional agencies. The law bans women and girls who are trans and others from who are intersex also from sports. Now, the state has already banned trans girls who had not completed a year of hormone therapy, but the case is now before the U.S. District Court, and it's kind of heartbreaking. I mean, we did hear from a viewer this week who had some sympathy to this. Where are these trans athletes supposed to compete? Where do you want them to compete? You want trans boys to compete against girls because they were quote unquote born girls, so they have to compete with other girls. They're going to win all the time. It's just wrong.
Yeah. But better news in trans competition on Jeopardy, where feats of strength are not part of the competition. Trans lesbian Kate Freeman, a financial analyst from Lake Orion, Michigan, wore a trans flag pin on her lapel and won $5,595. She was defeated the next night, I guess, but she had a night of triumph and visibility on Jeopardy.
All right, some international news?
Yes.
All right.
All right, well, let's run through some marriage news. In Switzerland, the parliament has finalized its approval of same-sex marriage and sperm donations for lesbians. The right wing is pursuing a public referendum, but the assumption is that the public is okay with this, and the
legislature did not put that as part of it, so that's good.
Yeah. And in Cuba, they're again delaying legalizing same-sex marriage. You may remember it was passed by the National Assembly and then deleted from the new constitution after a public poll said there were objections. But it is due to come up on March 21st in a vote on the new family code, but it could be delayed again because of COVID now.
And in Thailand, the democracy movement is dominated by rainbow flags and LGBT people who have been really front and center. And the government has proposed a same-sex partners bill, but the movement says marriage equality.
And in Spain, they've reported that in 2019, not this year, but the year before, there were 5,141 same-sex marriages, which constituted 3.1% of all marriages.
Very sad story from Lille in France. A trans teen, Avril was her name, took her own life after a guidance counselor humiliated her when she wore a skirt to school. At the Lycée Fenelon, she had been living in a shelter. 200 students and supporters gathered at a vigil for her. And then there's Mexico, the first out police commander, looking very smart in his uniform there, Javier Bardem.
That's why I wanted to do this, because he looks so cute. But also in Mexico, in Puerto Vallarta, watch out. They have an annual big gay New Year's Eve party for thousands of people, and it is still scheduled. Again, what is wrong with people? Mexico has a big COVID pandemic. It is crazy to go to this party in Puerto Vallarta.
Romania, the top court has overturned a government ban on gender identity studies.
And as you said earlier in talking to Reginald, the Vatican has announced in a prime case of situational ethics that I forget what we said about abortion and fetal tissue. Just because COVID vaccines are derived from some of that doesn't mean you can't take it. Go ahead, take the vaccines.
Well, Nancy Reagan came out for all that.
She's not the Pope.
Much more powerful. In Paris, a retired Archbishop, Luigi Ventura, former Vatican ambassador to France, was convicted of sexually assaulting 5 men in 2018 and 19, was given a suspended sentence, didn't even have to come back to Paris, ordered to pay $15,000 in damages. He goes on the sex offenses registry. It's the first time the Vatican has lifted diplomatic immunity. All right.
Wow, so impressive.
We'll give him a little something.
Yeah.
For Christmas.
Reginald was our AIDS news. Do you have any other?
I have no other.
Okay, let's move on to entertainment news. Congratulations to Will and James, the winners of this year's Amazing Race on CBS, a gay couple. I watched this show with our friend Shep, who keeps saying to me that he and I should compete on the Amazing Race, to which I say, in your dreams, Shep. But we exchanged notes on it. Neither of us liked Will and James at the beginning. We warmed up to them a little, but they won, so good for them.
Eddie Izzard, we have a picture of her now because Eddie Izzard, 58, has announced she is now exclusively using she pronouns. Calls it a transition period, says she is gender fluid. She has called herself a lesbian in a man's body and fancies women, but she was wearing women's clothes when doing stand-up for decades.
Yes, and quite a fetching picture, I think. So let's also show the picture of Elliot Page, who has, this is his first picture released in his new persona as Elliot, as a trans man.
Elliot says, your love and support has been the greatest gift. And it is the greatest gift we can give to each other if you need to do any last-minute shopping.
A movie coming to Netflix you might want to pay attention to. It's called Your Name Engraved Herein. It is the top-grossing Taiwan gay romance. It's about boys at a boarding school, where we heard that story before. But the Taiwan president recommended it and another gay film. The gay director used the film to come out to his mother. And it was made with collaborators from Singapore and Malaysia. And that is spreading to make those places more aware of gay.
And it's set in 1980, which is when Taiwan was making the transition from martial law, we may have this experience ourselves pretty soon, to being more democratic.
They're also going to eventually release a director's cut with an extra 40 minutes that's supposed to be even gayer.
I am going to include the trailer in our email this week, but if you want to be on our list, you got to go to gayusatv.org.
Okay.
Sort of excited by another series from Russell T. Davies, who gave us Queer as Folk, a new series called It's a Sin, about 3 18-year-old gays heading to London. We're going back to 1980 again, in 1981 on the cusp of the AIDS crisis and dealing with the plague years. Among the stars in it is Stephen Fry. It'll eventually drop on HBO Max when we will tell you more about it.
Okay. And not LGBT related, but I just wanted to mention the passing of country singer K.T. Oslin, who I just loved, and especially in my more lugubrious phases of listening to mournful country music. She had a great voice, a great persona. New Way Home and Mary and Willie were probably my favorites of hers. I was sorry to read about her death this week.
And we've certainly been all over the holiday movies to the point where I can't even keep up and haven't seen most of them.
I'm watching them all. You don't have to keep up.
Let's hear something about them, because Nielsen, the ratings agency, says that of the top 300 programs in 2019, 26% included at least one LGBTQ cast member, but 6.7% of recurring characters are LGBT or identify with the community. White LGBTQ people are overrepresented, and female LGBTQ people of color and Latinx LGBTQ people in general are underrepresented.
Well, that's certainly true, but we are everywhere. There are 6 identified current Christmas movies with LGBTQ lead characters on Hallmark and Lifetime, but we're really everywhere in almost everything. A lot of it is stereotypical, a lot of it is homogenized, but we're there.
And we're here.
For the foreseeable future.
For the foreseeable future. It's great to see you, Anne.
And you, from 100 yards down the block, here we are on Zoom together. But thank you all. We'll be back next week with another new program because we never quit. So we hope you're all having a good holiday season, and we hope we all have a much better 2021, but we'll get to more of that next week.
We'll review the year.
Will we? Okay, well, we're done this week. Goodbye.